The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody. I am hoping that, okay, good. Just making sure everyone is seeing the right screen here. So, good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending our support lab. Let's set this to present. First things first, per usual, if you guys could let me know that you can see my screen, I can get moving here. Awesome. Okay, cool. Thanks so much. So, per usual, I have my colleague, Nick Cortina, here to help with questions. So throughout the presentation, please feel free to submit any questions that you might have into the chat, and we will respond accordingly. So privately, if maybe a more specific use case, and of course publicly over the broadcast, if something that we feel everyone would benefit from. Without further ado, welcome to today's support lab. We're going to be talking about filters. Now, it's worth mentioning right off the bat that we have covered most everything in this lab at some point or another in a lab before. Very little here, if anything, is going to be truly new information. However, the means that we have covered this information is fairly scattered up until this point. We have done bits of it in our interactive HTML lab, right? We talked about interactive filters on the HTML canvas in that presentation. We've talked about it in the complete report design as well as our dashboarding lab when we released 17.2, but we realized that there wasn't a good place, really a one-stop shop for everything filters. And we wanted to bring that to you guys today. So I'm going to be walking through advanced reports and the different types of filters, as well as dashboarding. And I'm also going to be taking a bit of a different perspective today. So in the past, we've talked about really output-driven filters and what they do for us on output, but we haven't talked about why we might be applying the filters to begin with. I would really just like to, I'd like to focus today on the why. Before we even apply the filter, why do we think we need one? And then based on that, how and where we might do so, we might apply that filter. Okay, so the question of why do we use filters is one that we often don't consider. And I began to realize that in working with different folks using Exago, that this is something that, though not considered very often, is actually very important in exactly as I just said, in determining why and where to apply this filter. One reason we might apply a filter is to clean the data, and I put that in quotes because it's important when you're applying a filter to do something like eliminate null values or potentially an outlier. We need to understand that we are affecting the data that is going to be displayed, and not just in the visual aesthetics of the report, right? Maybe you're eliminating null values because they really make your report look pretty nasty. It's going to affect things like aggregate values. Now, I'm going to be showing you examples of this today. There are use cases that require us to clean the data. I just want to make sure we have an understanding of all of the places we're affecting as far as the output goes when we do apply filters of this type. Classic filtering is, I looked for a better way to describe classic filtering, and I really couldn't come up with anything outside of just the standard filter. You're simply looking to display a smaller set of data. There are so many whys behind a classic filter. It might just be, I'm writing this report for client X, so the only data that's pertinent to the report is client X's data. This is a classic filter, a very standard case, but it is a different why than maybe some other classic filters. So we'll talk about this as well with a few different angles. Finally, affecting user control, and this last why can really be broken into two use cases. Do I want to give users control, or do I want to take away control? We'll talk about both of those as well with a couple different UI changes actually that we can make for ourselves or the users running the reports. In this lab, and I already talked about some of this, we're going to talk about each of the whys. Now I've touched on them in text and verbally, but I'm going to show you, of course. We're going to create each type of filter on an example report. Nothing crazy there. That's pretty much the point of the labs. We're going to combine pre-filtered reports onto a dashboard. So this is where we bring advanced filters and dashboarding together. And really, how do they play together? How do they interact? This is an important understanding before you begin doing so. So we're going to talk about all about that, options there, and what it opens up for us, and maybe what we should consider prior to even placing these reports on the canvas. So we're going to start in Exago. Just going to make sure that we're starting from scratch here. I'm going to open up a report. Now I have a finished copy, and at the end I'm going to run the finished copy, but I think at this point I want to start with the non-filtered report. So I'm going to open up this report. We can give it a run. Now we've probably seen this report before. I'm just going to go a little bit smaller here so you guys can see everything. Now if that's too small for anyone, message into the chat, but I want to make sure we can see the whole report, and I'm on a bit of a smaller screen today. Okay, so this report is unfiltered. Like I said, I don't have any interactivity here. I can open this up, nothing filters related. I can columns and sorts. I can affect this, of course, but nothing has been applied in design. The first type of filter I'd like to talk about is using a filter to clean the data or clean the report output. This report is looking to show in association with each order, and it's grouped by employee. But that's a little bit less relevant to what we're going to talk about right now. In association with each order, I'm looking to show the region. I only have regions for some of my data. Now, whatever the reason is behind the scenes, the data collection is completely independent of Exago coming into the picture, and it's likely you don't. It's likely the person designing the report has no control over the input of the data. For whatever reason, we don't have values for these region orders, these order IDs. So whatever the reason may be, that's not really the focus of today's lab, but I'd like to filter out any orders, any line items where I don't have a region. I only want to see ones that I do. The other filter I'd like to apply is more of a standard filter, if you will. But I'd only like to see orders where units is greater than 0. I'd like to see orders where we did in fact order some units. Maybe these are placeholders for other items, right? We have a ton of these with 0 values. Whatever the case may be, I don't want to see that data anymore. In design, now if you have used the Advanced Report Designer, you're probably familiar with the 2 separate areas to apply filters. Going to use the first here. So going into this menu, I just talked about 2 filters that we'd like to apply. The first was eliminate where region is equal to null. So I'm going to set this not equal to no so that it filters for values that have a region. Second, I wanted to filter for units on order greater than. So my operator is different here, right? We used a not equal to, now we're using a greater than depending on our goal. And I'm going to do greater than 0. Okay. My summary is very helpful. It's going to explain exactly what I just did. If I read it start to finish, I can press OK. Now I'm going to run my report, and we're going to see those filters applied. So already we've made progress in this report output. We have regions for every item. That filter is working as expected. And we have units greater than 0 for every line item. Again, working as expected. So we're making good progress here. Great. None of what I'm showing you today is particularly difficult. Really, the idea is that if you're able to take a moment before you begin creating your report and consider what your true goal is. And I don't just mean apply a filter. Why am I applying this filter and what do I want it to accomplish for me? You can eliminate maybe some amount of backtracking that you might do in report design, potentially doing it the incorrect way or a way that you didn't mean to the first time and having to go back and fix it. So that's really the purpose of today. Now we're going to apply a filter that allows for user interactivity. But the fun part about applying filters that allow users to interact with the data is that there are so many ways to do it that I'm going to show you all of them, and you can pick and choose what your users will be comfortable with, what you're comfortable with. Maybe you're building the report for yourself. I'm going to start in that same filter window that I was in last time. So I'll move to the other one in just a moment, but we're going to start here again. What I'm going to do now is apply a date filter, an order date filter. I'll drag it over. This is going to use yet another operator. I want an is between, generally speaking, with dates. You'll be setting a range. Maybe sometimes you're setting a single date, an equal to, but it's a little bit less common. So let's go with what most folks are doing and work with this range. Now I'm going to go ahead and set a range of, let's do all of 2014, 2015, and 2016. So this is quite a wide data range, but I'm just setting this as a default value. I'm going to let my users change this. So let's do January 1st of 2014 and December 31st of, I said 2016. Okay, the difference, I'm going to prompt for the value. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and set this to be prompting. Great. Press OK. All right. Now I can run my report. The first thing I'm going to see is that prompting filter. This is the standard prompting filter window. So I mentioned we've got a lot of options here, and I haven't even moved on to interactive filters. This is still a standard filter. It just has a prompt associated with it. In the standard filter window, you can delete the filter. You can add new filters with any of the objects contained on the report. You can change the operator. You can change the relationship and with next filter versus or with next filter. I can group with the next filter if I have another or choose to apply another. And I can change the value. That is a lot of control for a potentially very non-technical end user. This is not to say this isn't extremely appropriate for some of our users, but it is a lot of options. So I'm going to leave the default range in this case, press OK. We're brought to this output, right? We've got our proper date filters applied. We're seeing data from 2014 all the way through 2016. We still don't have any interactive filters. Looking really good. Great. Awesome. Now if I grab, I'd like to, at this point, allow my users to interact with that prompting filter window. But I want it to be a little bit simpler for them. Okay? So I'm going to click the drop down. I'm going to go to my options, and I'm going to go to my general menu. Now, it's worth mentioning here that if you are following along with this lab, or if you afterwards go to look at this particular piece of it, and you don't see this option right here, filter execution window, there's a possibility that your administrator has not allowed you to change the filter execution window from the report level. That is a true or false flag. So it is possible that you don't have access to this. If you don't see this, reach out to your administrator, inquire, maybe if you'd like to see it, ask them if they'd be open to opening up this flag for you. The whole purpose of this flag is to allow us to change the option here. So if I want this to be a simple with operator, select that here, press OK. Now when I run my report, we'll see a completely different filter window. This allows me only to change the condition, the operator, or the values, right? Press OK, run my report, same deal there. Now there is one other I'm going to show you guys now. This is a simple without operator. I'm going to my general menu. I'm going to change this to without. This will look very similar with one key difference. I can't click this drop down now, right? I'm clicking, you see it highlighting, no drop down. Okay, again, brought to my report. Now let's say I'd like to now give my user even more control and allow them to interact here with that same filter. I want them to, on output, continue to interact with the data. Now I'm going to use our other filter window, Options, Report Viewer, Filters. Now again, on multiple labs, I've come into this window, and explained how to use it, what it does. Worth revisiting, certainly, because it is a very cool, important functionality, but nothing here should look totally foreign to you guys. It should be fairly straightforward. I can apply a filter that allows my users to interact on output. Just to reiterate, right, that's the goal here. I'm going to choose a range slider because it is a date, so I'd like to do a range, a date range. And I can initially display it on the panel. Now, when I get to the output, I'll talk about what this flag is doing exactly, but it's a very simple functionality. I can also change the title. Maybe I just want this to be date. We'll press OK. Now I'm going to run my report. I'm going to run this twice because there's an important distinction I'd like to make here. And this is one of the main reasons that I chose to do this lab today. Speaking with my team, and we found that we had some level of confusion. All of us had come up against some level of confusion with the following interaction. So I'd like to really, really stress this piece. I have a prompting filter on the order date field. I currently have a default range of 2014 to 2016 from the beginning of the year to the end, right? If I press OK, I now have an interactive filter that we just applied, and it is going to stretch from 2014 to 2016. This happens to be my entire data set. This was the whole date range that my data spans. So that means I can filter anywhere within this. I can redo this whenever I'd like. Now I'm going to change something and show you the difference. If I run this report and in the prompting filter window decide I only want to see 2016. So I'm going right now, I just changed the filter to go from January 1st of 2016 to December 31st of the same year. This means my initial execution of this report will not include years 2014 or 2015 or 2017 if I had data there, but we know that we're working with 2014 through 2016. When I press OK, the filter worked as expected. I only have 2016 here. And when I open up my interactive filters menu, I can no longer filter outside of the range that I just set on my prompting filter window. I am only able to filter within 2016 because on the initial execution, when I first ran this report, that was my filter. If I'd like to filter outside that range, I want to include values from 2015 or 2014, I can rerun my report and change the values in the prompt. However, this filter can only interact with the data on this canvas. The data on this canvas is limited to 2016, so that's what I have to work with. Great, and it looks like the questions pane is quiet. If you guys do have any questions about that, feel free to continue typing at any point, but I think that was one of the points I wanted to really hammer home. So that being said, great, I'm glad we're all clear. I'm just going to close out some of these because I do have quite a few. Okay, great. So I'm not going to apply more interactive filters to this report, but I do have a complete version that I'd like to run and just show you guys how some of the interactive filters can work here. So this is the same report that I was just running. It just has a few more interactive filters. So it should look exactly the same. But if I open this pane up, we have 3 filters here. Order date, same one we just created. Employee, so a multi-select, and a customer. When I was in the filters menu, I checked initially display on panel for our order dates filter. I'll show you right here. Options, report viewer. I have one filter and I checked initially display filter on panel. All the filters you see here had that box checked. Some of the filters that did not have that box checked will live in this little plus button menu. So I can allow my users to have a pretty clean initial panel display and then go ahead and give them the option to add more filters that I've pre-configured, but that they can add on at their leisure on their own time. If I have not set up an interactive filter for one of these, they won't be able to add them here. They can't simply select any field, just ones that I've set up a filter for. Okay, great. So I'm just going to take a minute to make sure there are no questions. Give us all a second to digest and see how we're feeling. Okay, looks like we're doing good. Oh, we did get one question. Can the filter panel be moved to the right side? Yep, so you actually set the default placement of that panel. It can be set to left or right. And that's really the options for the flag. So the answer is absolutely yes. That's an easy one. When using this is a great question. So I actually avoided language like this because this is an end user lab, but given the question is written in this manner, I'm going to answer it as such. When using the interactive filters, is it requerying the database? The reason that we cannot then filter outside of the range is that we don't go back to the database. We're filtering in memory. Once we've already applied the database filter, the interactive filter is not reaching out to do that. It's simply modifying the content that you already see on the canvas. Okay, great. Okay, we do have a couple more questions, so I'm just going to make sure that they are not appropriate for the group. Give me one moment. Interactive filters are not new. They've been around for many years. Maybe reach out with your version if you don't see them there, and we can speak with your administrators and your team and see if they're just not enabled. Okay. All right, I'm going to continue on here. I think there's a couple questions, but Nick is handling them, and if there are more, certainly I will loop back. But I think we're okay for right now. Okay, great. So what we've come to now is the dashboard piece, right? We've talked about advanced reports, interaction between interactive filters and database filters, standard filters, if you will. Let's talk about what happens when we accumulate all of this onto a dashboard. So I'm going to close everything we see here. I've actually got a dashboard built up for us. However, no filters have been configured. This is the report that we've been working with the whole time. It's the one that I ran right at the end, so it has all of the filters applied to it, but the only one that's going to be important is the prompting filter. These two reports, and they're exactly the same except for the aggregate value. I'm going to open up one of them. So let's look at this one. Right, very simple. It has a single filter, a date range from 2015, January of 2015 to December of 2016. It is also prompting. The other donut chart on my dashboard has the exact same filter. Okay, so prompting filter with a date range, default date range defined on all 3 of these reports. Now, if I open up the filter window, this is my global dashboard filter window, and I know that because it says dashboard filters at the top here. I see a preset dashboard filter. Now, all I've done prior to showing this screen to you folks today is drag on these 3 reports. I've not applied this filter. This is here because of the prompting filter. And when I hover it, it shows you all 3 reports. That preset filter is on all 3 of them. If I press this arrow to open it up, it lists the reports for me that have this as a prompting filter. You won't see preset filters appear here when you place a report on a dashboard unless they were prompting. Apologies, I just lost the word. Unless they were prompting on the advanced report, okay? Now I have a few options to affect the dashboard. I can prompt upon dashboard execution for this value. It's going to prompt and then affect all 3 reports. I can also show on output. So this allows me to turn this filter into both a prompting filter and an interactive filter on the dashboard. And all I had to do was click 2 checkboxes. Understanding that you're going to want to use the same filter on these reports and designing them for a dashboard can allow you to in the initial design of each report, set them up to work best with a dashboard, the way we have here. Okay? All about making sure that you are most effectively building reports. We want to ensure at Exago that you guys are using the tool the way it's meant to be used, and in such making your lives easier. This tool is not meant to make your lives more difficult. It's meant to make them easier. So knowing the best practices can allow you to use it in the best way. Okay, the last thing I want to do here is talk about adding a filter that maybe wasn't existing on the reports. Because maybe on those reports, maybe I intended to have these run, particularly this tabular one, independently, but I didn't want to be prompting for, let's say, an employee name when I was running it independently, just on the dashboard. I can apply it to all 3 reports if I'd like. They all contain the employee field. I'll choose my filter field. I'm going to do employee last name, let's say. I'm going to choose a different operator. Let's try is one of, because I want to be able to select multiple employees at once. And then I'm going to select a default. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll just do the first couple there. Okay. Run my dashboard. We get the prompt. Beautiful. I can change the condition or the values. Press OK. My dashboard loads. Beautiful. And then filters, right? So now we've got it filtered to those 5 default values, and the date filter is working for us here. We had from 2014 to 2016, so it's a pretty wide range there. If I click this filter button, right, so you see it hovering when I move my mouse over here, it's going to show me the filters that I've set up. I can continue to interact with my order date filter, or I can continue to interact with my employee last name filter, that one that we set up to only be an interactive filter. I'm going to pause again, check out the questions pane, make sure that we're doing okay. Let's see, looks good. If you're currently typing, of course, continue to do so, but nothing new since the last time. That's great. Okay, so that's the end of the content that I had prepared for you guys today. I would like to go back to my PowerPoint and just really talk about some takeaways. To summarize, our main considerations in creating filters are: what is the reason? Are we doing it for performance? If so, an interactive filter is probably not our best bet, right? Because we talked about the one that will actually limit the initial size of the data set is going to be the standard filter, the database filter. if we're talking about or thinking about user interaction and what it will look like downstream once the report is completed, we probably want to consider interactive filters and maybe think about how they're going to work with prompting filters. Maybe a combination or one or the other is all we need. Finally, what are our downstream intentions? And of course, these top 2 points really all tie into downstream intentions. Everything should be, what is my goal? And proceed accordingly. But really considering, are we putting this on a dashboard or just running it independently? Because the things that we want to think about there are very important as well, right? What are we actually going to do with this report? Okay, great. Finally, tune in on Halloween for a super fun filters lab. Now, some of the questions that a couple of you are asking today, not very many, but a few of you have been asking questions that absolutely will be answered in the admin filters lab. We're going to talk a lot about a lot of what we did today and what it looks like on the back end, right? So we're going to look at the difference between database filters and interactive filters, talk a little bit more about the why behind some of the stuff I said today, right? I talked about performance and how it's implicated, but we want to know why. Additionally, how indexing at the database level can improve this. And then we're going to talk about filter drop-down objects as well. So this lab is going to be full of great information. We're really stuffing it to the gills. It's going to be pretty phenomenal. So tune into that one if you're interested in sort of a sister lab to this one. We'll certainly be sure to answer any questions that are remaining in the chat right now. Other than that, thank you for attending, and we'll talk to you in 2 weeks.